Hey, what's up guys, it's Tony aka T-Slaps here, and we're back with a brand new Draft League video, baby. I'm your coach of the Austin FC for Deerlings, and this is our draft analysis for BBR Season 10. I'm super excited to be joining the BBR this season for my first full season, I believe. I don't think I was ever in BBR back in the day. I was obviously in the D-League for a few seasons, and then I took over as a replacement main coach last season in the BBR, and here we are for our first main season of the BBR. So this league is not your typical standard draft or anything like that. This is going to be an LC league. So of course, if you're not familiar with LC, it's all NFE, not necessarily NFE. All stage 1 Pokemon are allowed in this draft, and with a few exceptions of some bans, but basically just, all the baby Pokemon of every single stage is pretty much allowed here. Everyone's played at level 5. A super fun format. I think the only really big rule here is no terrestrialization in this league. Terrestrialization in LC is pretty broken, so we are not going to be running it. But otherwise, it's going to be a really fun league. I love Little Cup. Got really good at it back in Gen 7. Didn't play too much of it in Gen 8, so really glad to be back here with the format that personally I love a ton. So let's just get into our draft analysis. Want to make this short and simple for everyone, of course. So with my first pick, I was, I believe, 4th overall in my draft pool. There's 2 draft pools, each with 8 coaches, and I was 4th overall. I think the only thing I really would have loved to have grabbed, other than what I ended up grabbing, was Timber, but that ended up getting grabbed by Playmore, aka General Tar Heel. So I ended up going with Cutie Fly. So Cutie Fly is really cool. Love it's just really able to OHKO everything. There's an asterisk to this Cutie Fly in that I can't use Quiver Dance. Quiver Dance is pretty overpowered on Cutie Fly, so I'm not able to run it, but it's still good regardless. The best web setter in the game, to be honest, or at least in the tier, of course. And it's really strong with either of its stab, Moonblast or Bug Buzz. Gets a nice momentum grabbing with U-turn, gets good coverage for poison types with Psychic, and there's not much else to talk about with Cutie Fly. Cutie Fly is super strong. I mean, typically banned in LC, but of course that's just because it has the ability to quiver. So without quiver, it's a bit more manageable. I decided to grab Cutie Fly. It also really pressures a lot of the strong fighting types in the tier that don't get coverage, like Bullet Punch or something like that. So I think Cutie Fly is going to be a really good grab to start off our league. So with pick 2, I honestly really wanted to grab the small in pick number 1, but I decided, hey, I'm gonna wait out on it. I think I can wait till round 2. If I get sniped of it, I'll probably cry. But luckily it got to me, and we're gonna grab our mascot with Apom. Apom is super amazing. It's on the same level of Cutie Fly, where it's if banned in LC, it's a bit more manageable in Draft League, and especially because it doesn't get Tail Slap anymore. That was a beautiful time when they got Tail Slap. So now you're having to rely on unreliable Fury swipes and stuff like that. But Apom is still really strong, gets amazing coverage. I mean, if you needed to hit something super effectively on the other side of the team that your normal stabs don't hit well, it gets a move for it. It also gets knockoff to remove items, which is of course so much more important here in LC. Removing an Eviolite off of something. U-turn as well, of course, is really good for momentum grabbing. It can attack both physical and special. I mean, Apom's just amazing, right? So, I'm really excited to be using it on my team. And yeah, I'm getting to the next pick. So, of course, with grabbing Apom, I do want to try to enable that. And I decided here I wanted to grab something that would help me with fighting types. Of course, I have Cutie Fly, but Cutie Fly as my fighting resist is a no bueno, right? Not good. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab Coughing here. Coughing being one of the best defensive walls in LC. Give it that Eviolite. I mean, it is just not dying. It helps deal with the bulky fightings across LC, just as Scraggy, Timber, things like that, extremely well. Helps with ground types like Mudbray and Diglett. It's just super good. It can take any hits. Of course, it gets decent coverage. I mean, Sludge Bomb and Thunderbolt, you're not really needing much more than that in LC, to be honest. And then more importantly, you got a lot of status options with Willow, Pain Split, Memento. Weezing is just super strong in LC as a defensive wall. I'm really happy I was able to grab it at round 3. Not sure how that happened, but I think it pairs really well as well with Apom being able to U-turn out on maybe fighting types that don't have Mach Punch and things like that, and just being able to pivot into my Coffee and go from there. So for my fourth pick, I decided to grab some hazard removal. Hazard removal is already hard to come by, at least good removal in Generation 9, and take that down to LC, and it just gets even harder. And so I decided I wanted to grab Toadstool. With this being a new addition in LC, I don't have a lot of information on it personally, but I mean, it's able to spin. It has a decent speed tier. It's not like overtly slow or anything like that, right? And it gets good coverage options, of course. It's strong ground coverage, ground coverage, grass coverage. It can wall electric types really well. It gets like sludge bomb in order to hit grass types that might come in on Toadstool. Of course, it has the ability to set hazard, set spore. Of course, that's going to be with some negative priority due to its ability, but it's okay. I don't think I really need to use Toadstool to set up hazards or anything like that with my team. And I don't think I have to worry about sporing things, hopefully, but there might be situations where it does end up coming in handy. But overall, I think Toadstool's really going to be good for absorbing up electric type moves against some certain mons maybe that don't have great coverage, and it's just going to be a really good remover for my team because I don't want to worry about hazards and have to run like boots on Kigify every week or something like that. I think having good removal is really important here. So next, I decided to grab another defensive Pokemon, but more importantly, I wanted some hazards on my side of the field. Like I said, I do have spikes on Toadstool, but it's going to be a negative priority, and I really don't necessarily want to waste up a slot of Toadstool's coverage, especially because it's going to have to be spinning as well. So I don't want to waste a slot on hazards if I don't have to. So I decided to grab Qfant as my next pick in order to set up hazards, set up rocks on the other side of the team or other side of the field. It's going to be super important, of course. It's going to allow me to break things like sashes, sturdies, things like that. And even like the rock chip is super important for rolls from being able to Oko thing, because nothing in this tier is really defensive or anything like that. Mine is like a few strong stars. So when you have strong physical attackers, or not physical attackers, but strong breakers such as the Cutify and the Apom, where it's probably not going to straight up Oko something, having that rock chip is of course super important, right? And so I have Qfant here, and of course it hits super strong as well with sheer force. I mean, it gets a decent amount of coverage when it comes to either Iron Head or Heavy Slam. I mean, Heavy Slam is just so strong because of how light all the Pokemon in this tier are, being LC mons. So Heavy Slam is just really good alternative as well. You get good coverage with like Player Up, gets sheer force boosted, Rock Slide of course, Zen Headbutt. I don't think Superpower is, but it gets really strong coverage options. It doesn't like have a ton, but it gets what you need, and that's really what's important, of course, when it comes to coverage. So I think Qfant's going to be a really good addition and really good Eviolite user here on our team. Of course, you can only run 2 of each item in the LC tier, at least here in LC draft as well. So it's really important that you grab Pokemon that are able to utilize those items well. You don't want to be wasting your Eviolite user on a Pokemon that's really not going to enjoy it or get much use out of it. So I think Qfant's of course really good here on this team. So next up, I decided I wanted another breaker. Kind of got like a good defensive core here with Qfant and Coughing. They pair really well together, and of course with Toadstool as a good support mon and breaker. I decided to grab like one last breaker, and I decided to grab Houndour. Houndour is still on the board. It's a cheaper option when it comes to breaking, and I think both having a dark type to help with psychic spam, because you don't want to get like spammed by a strong psychic type in this tier, and of course like setup with like a stored power set is really annoying. So Houndour being on the team's of course really good here. It gets priority with like Sucker Punch, I believe, as well. It's also like a decent spore check with Earth or with Early Bird, so I don't really have to worry about that. It gets Unnerve, which is nice for berries and niche situations. I don't see that coming super in handy, but it could. Flash Fire, of course, gives us a fire immunity, which is always really nice and plays well with Qfant as well. And it gets, like I said, it gets the coverage that it needs. It gets like Psychic Fangs, of course. It gets Trailblaze to speed itself up. It gets Taunt. Taunt is always super amazing in this tier as well. So I think Houndour was a nice budget pick for what I needed, because at this point we're getting to the end. I want to make sure I plan my budget out right. So I'm pretty happy with Houndour getting grabbed here. But around this point, I noticed that I did have a lot more points than I realized was going to be left over. So I decided, hey, I don't have a water type quite yet, and one of the strongest water types in the tier is still around. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab Corpus here. Corpus, of course, is super strong with adaptability. You can just break through everything. If you want a hypercutter, you can, but I mean, adaptability is always a million times better, to be honest. But yeah, we're running Corpus here. It gets super strong setup with either DD or just SD. Aquajet is also super amazing. If you want to give it an EV light, so it can guarantee setup on anything pretty much, because it's going to be bulky enough to take a hit with that EV light. You can do that with Corpus, and there really is not many switch-ins to its water adaptability stats once you get it set up. Corpus is going to be able to break through teams really easily, or just be able to sweep late game for me. And so I'm really happy with Corpus as a grab here really late. One of, like I said, the strongest water types in the tier. And I think he'll be able to put in a lot of work in this season. We're at our final 2 picks because we only have 9 picks in this draft, and I'm looking at my team, and I do think I'm pretty water weak at this point. So I could grab another grass type, but I'm not really a big fan of the grass types that are currently sitting on the board. And so I decided I wanted to go with a more non-traditional water resist here, and that's going to be Croagunk here. So Croagunk, of course, isn't a water resist naturally, but with its ability Dry Skin, we are able to be immune to water type attacks. And there aren't a lot of water types that are going to have like psychic coverage for my Croagunk, to be honest. Most of them, of course, are just going to have like ice coverage, which it might still do a decent chunk to Croagunk, but Croagunk can always just attack back extremely strong. It has good both physical and special coverage, getting things like, of course, dual stabs with its poison and fighting moves, but things like Earthquake to hit maybe poison types that are trying to come in, like the Marini. It gets priority with both Fake Out and Bullet Punch. It gets Knockoff, which actually I found out that Pawniard doesn't have Knockoff anymore, which is crazy. So, I mean, Croagunk keeping Knockoff is, of course, super good. It gets Taunt, Thunder Punch. It gets Vacuum Wave as well as priority. I mean, I think Croagunk's bag of moves is pretty crazy, to be honest. And so I think my team's definitely going to struggle with water types, I feel like. But I think Croagunk is a nice niche option to help me deal with those that won't have me like grabbing like for a really bad grass type that it's just gonna get like 2-shot by an Ice Beam or something like that by a water type if they predict it coming in. So I'm pretty happy with Croagunk here. I think it's gonna be able to put in a little more work than I expect it to, and I think it was really gonna impress people this season. And with my final pick, I had 3 points remaining at this point, and I was just like, okay, let me try to find the best Pokemon I can for that value, and I decided to grab Bonsly. Bonsly, I don't know, but it's gonna be pretty niche when it comes to games. It does have a few gimmicks. Of course, it's another hazard setter. I don't really have much outside of Q-Fan and Toedscool, but Bonsly does get rocks, of course, and I think the most important thing about it is it has Sturdy. So Sturdy, of course, is going to help me live any one hit from anything that isn't using a multi-hit move, of course, and that could be really useful in niche situations, maybe when I'm in a matchup where I'm like, okay, I literally cannot stop something when it's at 1 HP or when it gets set up. So maybe I can run like Bonsly with Sturdy red card or something like that to get it out, and maybe like at least try to reposition myself to not lose to it a second time around, right? So there's always that, and it's also a decent flying resist depending on what the flying type is. Of course, if it's like a Wingull, obviously not, but something like a Starly, we can deal with it with Bonsly, right? And so that might be really important in a matchup where I don't really have the greatest switch into their flying types. But that's going to be my team for the BBR Season 10 Little Cup season. Let me know what you guys think of my draft. I'm super excited to use it. I mean, I think Apom and Cutiefly are super strong core. I think Croagunk I'm pretty excited for, as well as Corpus. Honestly, I'm excited for my entire team. I think it's one of the strongest teams in the whole draft. And so I think if I can make sure to put a lot of effort into my prep this season and play really well, I think this honestly could be my chance for a deep playoff run. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, as we are uploading 3 draft leagues currently on the channel. Well, I think 2 at this point, but the 3rd one's coming right around the corner with a ZA draft if you want to see some new mega content on there. We have the draft jam, of course, also gearing up towards the end of the season, so you know we're pushing for our playoff race there as well. And of course you can see this new league and of course enjoy the weekly LC content. So Anything else, once again, check out all the other BBR coaches down in the description below. Thank you to Owen, OG Albina for the invite, of course, for the league. Thank you to CB Marcus for the slides that you saw here in the video. And yeah, I'll see you guys every single Sunday with a new BBR upload.